What was cooler, being a Vulcan Council member in Star Trek or a Starfleet admiral in Into Darkness?
Well, it's a draw, and I'll tell you why. The Vulcan Council membership was not only my first foray into Screen Trek, but I got a bubblegum card, which is framed in lucite in my office. Having said that, when Khan attacks the council chamber, when Khan attacks the meeting in Into Darkness, Bruce Greenwood and I are shot a lot and lurch forward. And they offered a stunt performer for me, but I said no. And they gave me knee pads and I got a stunt bump. So technically, for a day, I was a stunt person. So you can see that they're sort of neck and neck when it comes to joy.
That's fantastic. By the way, I'm sure you would have paid to be a stunt performer in a Star Trek.
I would have paid to do anything in a Star Trek, anything. So the fact that I get to do so much in Star Trek things is an extraordinarily impossible gift.
Star Trek The Next Generation, probably my all-time favorite show. I love it. I definitely want to know how much you paid to work on Picard.
So I have Polaroids of Alex Kurtzman, and I sold them back to him. So I am like you in that, although older. So my favorite show is TOS. And so my first Star Trek convention was 1976. I was 14 years old. And my mother somehow let me, Billy Weinreb, Lee Grettenstein, and Kit Gunning, and Paul Bennett get a hotel room at the Statler Hilton. Crazy. And we had a lot of pot. That was when pot had seeds and stems. You rolled it on a record album to get the seeds and stems out. And there was this thing that I had been watching. It used to be on WPX Channel 11, 7 o'clock every night, first run syndication. I don't quite remember the show itself in first run. I probably saw one episode with my father. So for me, it came in first run syndication. And even then, the episodes were being somewhat reduced for commercials. And, what passed for televisions, for color televisions at that point, had nothing to do with the color that we see today. So you went to a Star Trek convention, you could suddenly see these, the real blues and the phaser cannon that's cut out in the Rockwall scenes for next week. I mean, it was as if God had landed and delivered unto you the opportunity to be amidst all that was extraordinary. And in those days, the community was smaller. So I remember Isaac Asimov was there, David Gerrold was there, Harlan Ellison was there, and everybody would speak. And I still have the brochure. It's hand typed. Some fucker mimeographed it. God bless. And so you talked about Fringe. Some years later, after I had talked to my friend JJ, I introduced him to his wife, and this allows me endless opportunities to get favors back. So after I had talked him into putting me in a couple of Star Trek movies, somewhere in there, I had said, look, I would like to try to direct something. I had just directed an episode of Kings. I would like to try to direct an episode of Fringe. I had just started. Your show Fringe seems fun to me, said I. And he said, well, you have to write it. And I said, well, I don't want to write it. I just want to direct it. He said, tough, you have to write it. So I tried to write a Fringe episode, which I did. Jeff Pinkner sent me back to outline 11 times because it turns out writing a TV episode is hard, and I didn't know how. And so then I wrote and directed this episode, the sort of middle of first season, called Bad Dreams, I think, and I never left. I was drunk uncle on that show for years, and I couldn't have been more delighted. And so somewhere a couple of years ago, Alex Kurtzman, right, who's one of the co-creators of Fringe, finds himself, he's off shooting a movie. There's some sort of turmoil on Star Trek, and he's like, could you go just sort of help hold it together and get it launching? And it's the same thing. I've never left. I mean, they let me in, and now they just can't get rid of me. I live for it. It's my favorite thing. It's so counterproductive because I should be doing all sorts of other things, and all I want to do is Star Trek all the
time. I understand completely. If I was given keys to the Ferrari, I would also say I'm not giving them back. You know, I get it. So I'm very curious. I know Picard got a season 2, and you guys were you close to shooting? Were you shooting?
We were not shooting. We were to start shooting in June, which I guarantee you we will not, unless the world opens tomorrow. We had broken the season. We are about halfway through the writing of it. We will start as soon as we can once the world opens. We will, the prep will have to resume, and then we'll start. So, we know it is, and it's cool, and we're excited by it. And, I feel like we learned a lot from season 1, and and of the things that I have in my life, it is the one that is most imminent when the world reopens, right? It's the one that feels like that's the thing that's going to, at least in my life, come back fastest, he says.
So I had heard, and maybe you can correct this, but I had heard Picard was always envisioned as a 3-season show. Any truth to that?
I think that we have discussed it as both a 3-season show, a 5-season show, a let's just keep going forever show. I think that probably that 3-season thing, my guess is, and I do not know this to be a fact, that there are probably 2 seasonal option pickups in the deal. You know what I mean? So, but we certainly, Star Trek Picard, in my view, will go as long as Patrick Stewart wants to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say is that, he is not a young man anymore. I love him to death, but how long does he want to play the role?
Yeah, look, and that's really the question, right? As I'm sure you know, he was not interested in coming back. And we, did a lot of eye-backing and a lot of really good collaborative story breaking and talking, and and I think he's particularly delighted in a good way now about having come back. And we will rely on that goodwill until he feels he's done.
You mentioned you're halfway through breaking season 2. There is an advantageous thing the only good thing that happens with this pandemic for Picard is you're getting more time with the scripts. And also it's possible that you could finish the whole season. So when you do in the writer's room, so when you do go set out to film, you can block film what you need in certain locations for all the episodes, or is that not possible?
So yes to the first part, no to the second. So to the first part, it is fundamentally a gift to be able to do all of them if you can, right? Because unlike previous iterations of television, this serialized 10-hour narrative has setups and payoffs that, require a kind of thoughtful view of the object once it's completed. It's very funny, in the first season of Picard, there were all these reviews of the beginning. Oh, it's so dark, it's so dark, it's so dark. And I kept saying, they're reviewing the first act of a movie. Like, the first act of a movie is always dark. If you stopped It's a Wonderful Life at the bridge, it's a really dark movie. Because fundamentally in a long form narrative, if it's a redemption story, if it's a healing story, it has to be bad at the beginning, so it gets good at the end. Otherwise there's nothing to fix. So, we are in this weird world now where we create one narrative object, but we dole it out bit by bit, which is fascinating, and can be kind of fun. But what you really want is to be able to refine yourselves once you've written your papers. So if in fact you could have, the time to write 10 hours first, that would be amazing. And maybe we will. In terms of shooting, we do block shoot. We block shoot in episodes of 2. But the way it works with the Directors Guild is you can't do that. You know what I mean? Unless we had one director doing the whole thing, then you actually I can't shoot something for Jonathan Frakes episode.
You wrap season 1, come out. Have you all of a sudden gotten a lot more phone calls from people saying they would really love to helm an episode in season 2?
Well, that I haven't. I mean, that would be Secret Hideout more, and but the truth is we have it's a little, there are only 5 directors per season, right? Because it's 2-episode blocks. So, anybody who pretty much wants to come back from season 1 is coming back. That might leave a slot open.
My last thing for you about Picard, but I could keep on going. You obviously, Jonathan Frakes, you had some, key characters in the first season. Are any of those characters? Can you tease any of the original, of who might be visiting in season 2?
No. I mean, I want to, but no.
Right. I get it. Listen, I have to.
I respect you.
Yeah, and by the way, I have so many questions. So someone on Twitter, and I want to include a Twitter question, said, what kind of ship was the La Sienna? It was unlike any other ship we'd seen on Trek.
The La Serena was...
Serena. I'm bad at English.
Okay. What is it? It's a modified cargo ship. It's non-Federation. And that's all. We made it up.
Things are made up in Star Trek?
Oh, when I say made up, we got that telescope that looks in the future, and we found it.
Right, of course. I have since I'm running out of time, I'm going to go through a bunch of questions. A lot of us have been wondering about Lower Decks. What's the status of that?
I have nothing to do with Lower Decks except desperate to watch it. Like, literally couldn't seem funnier to me.
Have you seen any of it?
No. There was a test reel going around the office, and I didn't see it, and that sucks. But I've seen the still frames, and the pitches for it are fun. Like, literally the pitch for it is the funniest thing you've ever heard. Second Contact, I mean, it's the greatest thing ever.
We're all ready to watch.
Yeah,
we just want to see it.
Me too. I think Mike McMahon is actually a genius.
Are there any updates on this Pike series? Are you just nodding your head because you can't say, or you won't say?
All those things. Can't say, won't say, ain't saying, don't know, wish I don't know, could know.
What about the Section 31 series?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't. I know that there were or are scripts being developed for Section 31. I don't. I mean, I don't.
So you're not involved in that one. Got it. I love the way you ended Star Trek Discovery Season 2. It opens up this huge new possibility for Season 3. What can you tease people about the 3rd season?
I can't. I'm not on. I'm not on Discovery now. I just know things about
it. Just Picard.
Today.
Got it. Well, look, for you, obviously you watched Discovery. I'm just curious about the ending of season 2. And
look, we all helped build that idea, even all the way back to season 1. Aaron Harberts and Gretchen Berg, the original showrunners and the showrunners of season 1, like that idea dates all the way back to that. I think it's a spectacular idea, which is to go post the timeline we know. I think Alex Kurtzman. So Alex has really been deeply involved in the building out of what season 3 looks like, and what that post-Federation future is. I've seen some of it. I mean, because we all work together in the same, place with lots of pictures of Star Trek on the wall and editing bays and things. And it seems awesome to me. I mean, I think it is. It's not a final frontier, but it's a new one.